Every Sunday, we eat dinner at Mom's house. But last week, there was an extra seat at the table, and it wasn't for me. I walked up the driveway balancing a pie dish in one hand, the other gripping the strap of my bag like it might run off without me. The porch light flickered overhead, still not fixed after 2 months, and the front door was slightly ajar, laughter already spilling out into the cool evening air. I checked the time. 15 minutes late. Not enough for anyone to really care, but just enough for someone to make a remark. Inside, the smell of roast chicken and garlic mashed potatoes curled into my nose. The familiar aroma should have comforted me, but instead, I felt that slow curl of anxiety in my gut. I stepped in, slipping off my shoes, and glanced toward the dining room. They were already seated. Melissa in her usual spot, hair perfectly blow-dried, nails French-tipped and gleaming around a wine glass. Claire sat beside her, pink bow in her hair and cheeks smudged with what looked like chocolate. Kevin hunched across from them, his eyes cast downward at his plate, and Mom sat at the head of the table, smiling wide, but not at me. There was an empty chair, yes, but not next to me, not even across from me. It sat between Melissa and Kevin, my old seat, I realized with a small jolt. In its place now was Melissa's handbag, perched proudly like a smug little dog. No one looked up as I approached, not even when I cleared my throat gently. I set the pie down near the kitchen pass-through, the dish still warm through the towel I'd wrapped it in. "Hey," I said softly. "Oh, Rachel," Mom finally said, as though noticing a painting had been tilted. "We started without you. I hope you don't mind." I smiled tightly. Not at all. I sat in the remaining seat at the corner of the table, half under the window draft and angled away from everyone else. Someone had set a plate and fork there, but there was no napkin. No wineglass either. Melissa launched into a story about Claire's piano recital like I hadn't just walked in. She played the whole piece from memory, didn't miss a single note. Mom beamed. A real prodigy, takes after her mother. Claire giggled, bouncing slightly in her seat. Grandma said I played better than Mommy did when she was my age. "That's true," Melissa said with mock humility, patting Claire's hand. I reached for the salad bowl, scooping some onto my plate. "She's also started helping me at work," Melissa added, sorting papers, putting together color swatches. The clients love her. Mom laughed lightly. "She's more useful than some adults I know." I paused, fork in midair. That had to be aimed at me. Kevin cleared his throat, finally breaking his silence. I liked the card you sent, Rachel. For my birthday. Thanks." "Of course," I replied, grateful for the human contact. Glad it arrived on time. The moment passed. The room pivoted again to Melissa, orbiting her as if gravity had declared her the sun. I waited until after the dishes had been passed before I quietly slid the pie closer. I made pecan bourbon pie. Thought it might be fun to try something new. Melissa wrinkled her nose. "That sounds intense." "Too sweet for me," Mom said, waving it off. "And you know I'm watching my sugar." Claire leaned forward. "Can I try some?" Before I could respond, Melissa put a hand on her daughter's arm. "Let's not upset your tummy, honey. You already had a cookie at lunch." The pie sat there, steaming gently, untouched. We continued eating. Or rather, they did. I picked at the salad, pushing cucumbers around like they might reveal a trap door. Then Claire turned to me, wide-eyed and innocent. "Do you have kids, Aunt Rachel?" The question was innocent. Her tone was curious. But the pause afterward, the hush, made the air suddenly brittle. Melissa didn't wait a beat. "Only cats and regrets, honey." Laughter broke out. Not loud, but enough. Enough to let it hang in the air and soak into my skin. I looked down at my plate. My hands were cold, my chest hot. Melissa raised her glass, still smiling. "To stable women with real families." She looked right at me. That was it. I stood slowly, smoothing down my dress. No one stopped talking. No one looked surprised. "Thanks for dinner," I said quietly. I think I've lost my appetite. Most people don't know what I do after dinner. That's exactly how I want it. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 12th floor. I stepped out, the familiar hum of downtown just a muted backdrop through the sealed windows at the end of the hallway. My keys jingled as I unlocked the apartment. Nothing fancy, just a clean, light-filled space with warm floors and a view that caught the sunset at the right angle. Before I could even set down my bag, the door burst open and Lily charged into my legs, arms wide, ponytail bouncing. "Rachel!" she shrieked, hugging me like I'd just come home from war. I laughed, heart lifting immediately. "Hey, monkey, did you beat Daddy at Uno again?" "She cheated," Daniel said, stepping into view behind her, holding a tiny deck of rainbow-colored cards. "But I let it slide. She's fierce." He kissed me lightly on the cheek, and just like that, the tightness from earlier, the extra seat, the untouched pie, Melissa's smirk, dissolved. This was home. Real, messy, wonderful home. After dinner at Mom's, I always told them I needed time alone to decompress. The truth? I ran toward this place like oxygen, toward the people who made me feel whole. I slipped off my shoes and followed Lily to her room. A tiny oasis of stuffed animals, glitter stickers, and one very determined fish tank. She climbed into bed without protest, book already in hand. "Tonight," she declared, "we're reading about the princess who built her own castle. No waiting for some prince." "That's my girl." I tucked her in, smoothing her hair behind one ear. She smelled like bubblegum and crayons. "Rachel?" she asked, blinking up at me. "Hmm? I like when you stay. I don't get scared when you're here." My throat tightened. I kissed her forehead. "I'll always be here." Daniel stood at the doorway, smiling. Quiet, grateful. Back in the kitchen, I poured a glass of water while he leaned against the counter, arms folded. "Rough dinner?" I gave a tired half smile. "Same script. Different Sunday." He nudged the water bottle toward me. "You're amazing, you know. Holding it all in, then walking in here like nothing touched you. I don't know if that's strength or trauma. Maybe both." He kissed my temple. "You're doing better than you think." We settled on the couch. He opened his laptop to finalize a proposal. I pulled mine toward me and tapped open 3 dashboards. One startup in Boston was launching a beta campaign on Tuesday. The LA skincare brand was navigating a minor influencer scandal, and the Berlin AI company needed a pitch deck by morning. PR emergencies don't care about time zones. Still, it gave me peace. Control. My screen blinked. Jenna calling. I plugged in my headphones. "Hey, boss lady." She grinned from her tiny kitchen on the other end. "Still hiding from your family?" "Always," I replied. Jenna was my oldest friend, the only one who knew the full truth. She'd helped me escape the corporate world years ago, back when Melissa still thought I worked at a pet supply warehouse. We shared everything now. Clients, contacts, late-night panic attacks. "Tell me your mom didn't insult the pie again." "She didn't eat it." Rude. Claire asked if I had kids. Melissa said, and I quote, "only cats and regrets." Jenna winced. "One day they're going to find out you run half of Silicon Valley's PR, live with a man who worships you, and are raising the coolest kid in the state." I shrugged. "Let them think I edit cat videos. It keeps the peace." Except it's not peace. It's invisibility. There was a pause. She looked right at me. I murmured, like I was a joke. "You're not." "I know, but part of me still wants them to see it, just once." "You're already seen, just not by them." After the call, I went to close my laptop when a soft voice called from the hallway. "Mama?" I froze. Daniel looked up from the sink, his eyes warm. "She's calling for you." I patted down the hallway. Lily sat up, her eyes sleepy but wide. "Can you tuck me in again?" she asked, voice small. I sat beside her, pulled the blanket up around her chin. Her fingers curled around mine. Outside the window, the city lights twinkled, unaware of the tiny universe held inside this quiet room. I kissed her hair. Back in the living room, I leaned against the wall, eyes wet. Daniel reached for me, but I shook my head gently. They'll never believe this is my life. I got invited to take pictures, not to be in them. Melissa's message had come 2 weeks earlier. Claire's birthday party, Saturday, 3 p.m. Bring your camera? You take such candid shots. There was no emoji, no warmth, just a polite command wrapped in a compliment. So here I was, standing in the backyard surrounded by lavender balloons and tiered cupcake stands, my camera strap digging into my shoulder like a leash I'd chosen to wear. The place looked beautiful. Credit where credit was due. But something about it felt stiff, overproduced, like a magazine spread missing a heartbeat. Children zipped past me in tulle dresses and superhero capes. A clown made balloon animals under a giant 8 made of gold foil. Claire was glowing in the center of it all, wearing a flower crown and a dress that probably cost more than my rent. She looked happy. That, at least, was real. "Rachel," Melissa called out from near the patio table. "Can you get a few shots of Claire by the cake before the frosting melts?" I raised my camera without a word. She didn't ask if I'd eaten, didn't introduce me to the guests, but she knew I'd show up, on time, dressed simply and doing what was expected. I started clicking photos. Claire posing with her classmates, Claire pretending to blow out the candles early, Claire hugging the clown. Melissa hovered behind her in every frame, smiling like she owned the air. "Make sure you get some wide shots too," she added, not looking at me. "Candid stuff. That's your thing, right?" I didn't answer. I just zoomed out and framed the next shot. Margaret approached as I stepped back to check the lighting. She held a glass of rosé, her face pinched with practiced joy. "You really have an eye," she said, her voice light but her gaze sharp. "Melissa says you're freelancing these days?" "Something like that," I replied. She always had such a flair for organizing. Just look at this party. She did a great job. Maybe next year you could help her plan it. I bit the inside of my cheek. Maybe. The group photo was next. Melissa herded the family onto the lawn. Mom, Kevin, Claire, a few cousins. I stood beside them briefly, camera slung around my neck. "Oh," Melissa said brightly. "Rachel, do you mind taking this one too? I want a shot with everyone." Everyone except me. Kevin opened his mouth like he might say something, then closed it again. I stepped aside. 1, 2, 3, say sparkle. Click. Another just in case. Click. As they dispersed, a woman I didn't recognize approached. Mid-40s, probably a neighbor or a co-worker of Melissa's. Her smile was friendly, maybe even curious. "So," she said, "what do you do again?" "Melissa said you work from home?" I nodded. I run digital PR campaigns for startups, mostly tech and wellness brands. "Wow, sounds intense." Before I could explain more, Melissa appeared beside her. She edits videos and handles social media. Nothing too stressful, thank goodness. The woman laughed politely, already turning away. I swallowed a retort and bent down to snap a picture of Claire spinning in her dress. Then I felt a tug on my skirt. "Auntie Rachel?" Claire looked up at me, squinting against the sun. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Why don't you have a family?" The question was so pure, so devastating in its honesty, I forgot how to breathe. She wasn't being cruel, just curious. But her voice was loud enough to turn a few heads. Melissa walked over, taking her daughter's hand gently. "Well," she said with that sugar-slick tone, "not everyone is cut out for real life." Her eyes met mine, calm and victorious. I smiled thinly. "Excuse me." I walked to my car without rushing, holding my camera to my chest like a shield. Once inside, I closed the door and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out my phone. It lit up with 1,000 things I didn't want to deal with. Emails, client notifications, reminders, but I ignored them all and opened the photo app. I scrolled past Claire's party, past the stage smiles and filtered sunlight, until I found the folder I kept hidden from the world, my family. Inside, Lily asleep on the couch with her feet on Daniel's lap, Daniel grilling on the balcony in mismatched socks, Lily's finger paint masterpiece taped to the fridge, Jenna mid-laugh on a Zoom call, me, blurry in a mirror, holding Lily's stuffed panda while brushing my teeth. A quiet life. A real one. I ran my thumb slowly over the screen, pausing on a shot of Daniel lifting Lily into the air while she shrieked with joy. They didn't know this, Rachel, but they would. ChatGPT Gen Noi. The world may think I'm alone, but I've got photos, letters, and a 5-year-old who calls me Mama. The morning after Claire's birthday party, I woke early, not to emails or alarms, but to the soft shuffle of tiny feet. Lily padded into the room with her favorite panda in tow, climbed onto the bed without a word, and curled into my side like she'd done it every day of her life. Bad dreams, I whispered. She nodded against my arm. I wrapped her in the blanket and let her breathing slow. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it but paused. Instead, I opened the gallery app and tapped the album I'd created last year, the one nobody else knew about, except Jenna. My family. It began with a crayon drawing. 3 figures holding hands, a sun too big for the paper, and the names written with backward letters. Daniel, Mama, Lily. I scrolled slowly. Lily sitting on the kitchen floor with flour all over her face while I crouched beside her holding a half-fallen cupcake. Daniel asleep on the couch, his arm thrown over both of us. Notes tucked into lunchboxes, Lily's birthday cards with uneven hearts. These weren't just memories, they were proof. Of love, of growth, of days built brick by brick into something I never thought I'd have. Later that morning, once Lily was at school and Daniel at a client meeting, I opened the digital scrapbook I'd started the night we moved in together. Photos, yes, but also screenshots of conversations. Missed you at dinner. Next time? From Kevin, unanswered. You coming to Claire's recital? From Mom, neutral. And beneath that, Jenna's fierce reply from just days ago. You're not invisible. You're just theirs in a way they don't understand. I copied a few images from the gallery into a new presentation. Maybe it was just for me. Or maybe it was step 1 of something bigger. At noon, I met Jenna at a corner cafe, her signature red lipstick already on a second cappuccino. Still brooding? She asked, setting her phone down. Or have we graduated to plotting? Somewhere in between, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. I've been organizing photos, memories. Cute or concerning? A bit of both. She sipped. Still hiding? I looked out the window. I don't think they'll ever see it as real. If I tell them I live with Daniel and Lily, that I love them, they'll say I'm just compensating, filling a hole. You are, Jenna said bluntly. But that's what we do when life guts us. We fill it, with hope, with work, with people. But you filled it with a family. That's not a lie. That's a miracle. I smiled weakly. You make it sound easy. It's not. It's just worth it. There was a pause. Show them, Rachel, she said, softer now. Stop waiting for them to make room. Knock down the damn wall. Something clicked in me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet understanding that waiting for acceptance was no longer my burden. I'm done hiding, I said aloud, more to myself than to her. Good, Jenna said. Now fill that silence with fireworks next time. That evening, after dinner, Daniel read Lily a story while I sat on the floor of the hallway closet, sorting through old shoeboxes. Birthday cards, the hospital bracelet from Lily's first visit to the ER. A napkin with yes scribbled on it from the night I told Daniel I'd move in. And at the very bottom, under a faded scarf, was the drawer. Inside, a small velvet box. I opened it slowly. The ring was simple, silver with a delicate twist of sapphire in the center. not flashy. Just right. He hadn't given it to me yet. Hadn't even mentioned it again since the night he first hinted at it months ago. But it had been waiting, quietly. Just like me. I turned it over in my fingers, light catching in its curve. They wouldn't believe this was my life. But they would see it. Soon. She wants a birthday cake? I asked. Then I'll bring something unforgettable. It started with a voicemail from Kevin, of all people. His messages were rare and usually practical. Reminders about Mom's doctor appointments or vague updates about Claire's recitals. But this time, his voice was tight with warning. "Rachel," he said, "Mom's birthday is next weekend. It's at Melissa's house again. Just don't expect it to be a celebration. She's planning something. I don't know what, but it's not just balloons and sheet cake." That's when I knew. The game had started. But this time, I was going to play. I called Kevin back immediately. "What do you mean she's planning something?" I asked, pacing the kitchen, the phone pressed tightly to my ear. "She's been dropping hints," he said, talking about how Mom deserves a real family moment, how she's so lucky to have one daughter who stepped up. Stuff like that. I let out a sharp laugh. So it's going to be another round of look at Melissa, the perfect child, and Rachel, the cat lady in exile? Pretty much. Just be ready. I hung up with a knot forming in my stomach. Not fear. Something sharper. Something like fire. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep watching Finding Nemo for the 3rd time this week, I sat at the kitchen table with Daniel and Jenna. Jenna was sipping wine. Daniel, tea. I had a blank note card in front of me and a pen that hadn't moved in 10 minutes. "She's expecting me to disappear," I said. Again. "She's expecting you to play the same part." Daniel corrected gently. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving," I said, finally pressing the pen to the card. "I'm reminding them I exist." Jenna raised her glass. "Now that's the energy I want to see." We began to plan. Not revenge, not really. Just exposure. Truth told in a way they couldn't ignore. "What are you going to wear?" Jenna asked. "You know presentation matters to people like Melissa." "Simple, clean, confident," I said. "Not flashy. I want their eyes on what I say, not what I wear." "Timing?" Daniel asked. "Let Melissa have the spotlight early," I said. "Let her build it up. I'll wait until dessert." He smiled. "So you are bringing cake?" "I'm bringing something better," I said. "I'm bringing clarity." I finally turned back to the note card, but instead of writing to Margaret, I addressed it to Lily. "Dear Lily, one day you'll ask me why I kept certain things hidden, and I'll tell you. I was scared. Not of being wrong, but of being ignored, of being erased. But you? You showed me how to be brave. You made me want to be seen. This isn't just about showing them who I am. It's about showing you what love looks like when it's brave." I folded the card and tucked it into my purse. Daniel, silent for most of the last few minutes, reached into the drawer and took out the small velvet box. Without a word, he placed it beside my hand. "I don't know if you'll use it that night," he said, "but I want you to know. It's yours when you're ready." I didn't open the box. I didn't need to. I knew what was inside, and that was enough. Later, in the quiet of our bedroom, I stood in front of the mirror. The soft glow from the hallway lamp caught my features just right. The calm eyes, the set jaw, the woman who used to shrink in every family photo. Not this time. I touched the purse where the card and the box waited, then looked at my reflection, steady and clear. "Let's give them a show," I whispered. I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to grow them, loudly. The sun streamed through the blinds in wide golden bars, lighting up the hardwood floor like a spotlight. I stood in the middle of my apartment in my robe, barefoot, staring at the empty space beside the coat rack. It was time to fill it, with something that didn't shrink. I scrolled through the photos Jenna had sent me. Options from a boutique she'd visited last week. Classic. Clean lines, no frills, but bold, unmissable. Just like the woman I was finally letting myself become. Daniel offered to drive, but I needed to walk. Something about the rhythm of pavement underfoot helped me breathe. I stepped into the boutique on 5th, the bell chiming with a sound too dainty for the decision I was about to make. Looking for anything in particular? The stylist asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Something that says, you overlooked me. Now you can't ignore me. She blinked, then grinned. I've got just the thing. I tried on 3 dresses before I saw it. Deep navy, structured but soft, with just enough shimmer at the collar to catch the light when I moved. When I stepped out of the dressing room, even I did a double take. This was not the girl who brought desserts nobody ate. This was not the woman asked to take pictures instead of being in them. This was armor. That evening, Daniel and I walked home slowly, our hands brushing. You sure you want to do this? He asked, glancing at me under the soft orange glow of the street lamps. I nodded. I've never been more sure. You don't owe them a thing. I know, but I owe myself the truth. And I want Lily to see that truth isn't something you hide from. We paused at a little corner park. A wind chime tinkled faintly from someone's porch. Daniel kissed my temple. Then I'll be right there, whatever happens. Back home, after Lily was tucked into bed with her panda and a blanket pulled up to her chin, I sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, pen in hand. The first lines came quickly, rehearsed versions of things I'd imagined saying for years, but every time I wrote a sentence, it felt stiff, distant, like I was preparing a campaign, not a confession. I crumpled the page, then another, and another. The trash can began to look like a snowdrift. Finally, I whispered, no script. I'll speak from truth. From Lily's room came a sleepy voice. Mama? I walked in and brushed her hair from her face. Why are you dressing like a queen? She asked drowsily, her eyes half shut. I smiled. Because queens tell stories no one else is brave enough to tell. She nodded slowly. You're pretty even in pajamas. I chuckled softly. Go to sleep, sweet girl. In the bedroom, I unzipped the garment bag and carefully hung the dress in my closet. I didn't look at it like a prize. I looked at it like steel. I had never worn anything that made me feel less invisible. I stepped back and stared. This wasn't a costume. It was the version of me I had always hidden behind silence. As I turned off the light, my phone buzzed. I picked it up expecting a reminder from Jenna or a meme from Daniel. But it was from Kevin. Melissa's up to something. We need to talk. Now. When your name is missing from a document that defines your family's future, you notice. I spotted Kevin before he did me. He was sitting near the window of a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse, shoulders hunched, one leg jittering under the table. His thumb tapped the screen of his phone, back and forth like a metronome. I slid into the booth across from him, and his eyes snapped up. Thanks for coming, he said, barely above a whisper. You said it was urgent, I replied, pulling off my coat. Is everything okay? He didn't answer at first. Instead, he opened his email and turned the phone so I could see the screen. There were images, documents, scanned copies. At first, the legalese blurred together. Then I saw it. Margaret C. Hammond will and testament. Draft. Beneficiary, Melissa J. Hammond. Just Melissa. I stared at it for a long moment, the words refusing to make room for my name. It was like trying to find yourself in a family photo only to realize you'd been cropped out. Kevin tapped to the next image. Melissa's handwriting in the margins. Rachel's situation is unstable. She has no dependents. This simplifies things. She said that? I asked quietly. In front of Mom, he replied. I overheard them 2 weeks ago when I dropped off groceries. Melissa brought over the draft and started going through it like it was already official. And Mom? Kevin shrugged. Didn't say much, just nodded. She seemed tired. My fingers curled around the ceramic coffee cup like it could anchor me. My pulse was steady, but something sharp had begun slicing through the inside of my chest, slow and deliberate. I'm not even surprised, I muttered. You should be, Kevin said. This isn't just about insults at dinner. This is permanent. You're being written out of everything. As if summoned, my phone buzzed. Jenna's name flashed on screen. I answered, putting her on speaker. Hey, you're on with Kevin too, I said. Great, she replied. So, I had my friend look at that draft. If Melissa files it within the next month and your mom doesn't explicitly contradict it, it'll stand. Kevin exhaled hard. Rachel's voice cracked. Quiet, almost too small to hear. They want me erased. Legally. There was a long silence on the line before Jenna spoke again. I'm sorry, I really am. I looked at Kevin, whose expression was taut with guilt. You need to say something, he said, before they seal this. I shook my head. I'm not going to argue for scraps. Kevin looked confused. Then what are you going to do? I'm going to show them what legacy really means. He tilted his head. Meaning? Legacy isn't about who inherits what, I said. It's about who remembers you and how, and I won't let Melissa define that for me. Jenna let out a low whistle. You've got a plan? I've got something better. I've got truth. I stood up, dropping cash on the table. Kevin watched me, half impressed, half worried. I'm not going to fight them in court, I added, but I am going to make damn sure no one forgets who I really am. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Jenna. And don't forget to check Daniel's jacket pocket. My eyebrows lifted. I slipped the phone into my bag without a word. Whatever it was, it could wait until I got home. Because right now, I was done playing defense. ChatGPT, Janoi. There's always a lie hidden in a family photo. You just have to zoom in. Daniel's jacket was hanging on the kitchen chair, half slung and inside out, just as he'd left it after last night's walk. I stared at it for a second, my breath catching slightly, then reached into the pocket. The paper was folded with care, creased 3 times, tucked deep like a secret. I pulled it out, fingers trembling despite myself. On the top line in Daniel's handwriting, it read, For the day I make it real. For the woman who already is. It was a vow draft, raw, unfinished, but each line felt more final than ink. A few inches below it was a printed receipt. 1 ring, 1 velvet box, purchased 6 weeks ago. He'd been ready, waiting. For me. My eyes blurred, but I didn't cry. Instead, I smiled. Not the kind that flickers and dies, the kind that stays. Rachel? Daniel's voice came from the hallway. I turned as he entered the room. His expression shifted when he saw the letter in my hand. You found it. I nodded, unable to say much. He stepped closer. I was going to ask you, after the party, in front of them all, because they don't get to pretend you don't exist anymore. I swallowed hard. Daniel, I've never had someone choose me in the light. He touched my cheek. Then let me be the first. The knock of Lily's bedroom door opening broke the moment. Her little feet padded down the hall and she peeked into the kitchen. I'm thirsty. Daniel went to fetch her some water, and I stood there, holding that letter, feeling something inside me steady. Later that night, while Lily colored beside me and Daniel read emails on the couch, I pulled up my photo archive on my laptop. Scrolling past folders, I paused on a label I hadn't touched in years. Christmas 2019. I clicked it open. There it was. The family photo Melissa had posted back then. All smiles, all posed. But zooming in, I remembered exactly where I had been standing. Next to Kevin. Behind Claire. I had been cropped out. And I knew it wasn't accidental because in the original photo, still saved on my phone, I was right there. Red sweater, small smile, hand half raised to wave. I stared at the edited one for a long time, then at the unedited one. I remembered crying in the bathroom that day. I remembered the sound of laughter down the hall while I wiped mascara from under my eyes. No one came to check. No one noticed I'd vanished for 20 minutes. I deleted the cropped photo. Then, with slow precision, I uploaded the original and wrote a caption. This time, I won't disappear. I clicked post and let the silence sit. Minutes later, my phone pinged with a new message. It was from an unknown number, though I didn't need a name to know who it was from. You are cordially invited to Margaret Hammond's 68th birthday dinner. Dress modestly. Family only. Family only. I almost laughed. Because if there was one thing I'd learned recently, it was that family isn't about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the whole room pretends you're invisible. ChatGPT Junnoy. Sometimes people don't stab you in the back. They do it over cake and coffee. The florist down the street had wrapped the bouquet in soft cream paper, the same shade as the hydrangeas inside. I stood outside Mom's house for a full minute, flowers in hand, trying to will myself into something soft, something forgivable. It was a quiet Tuesday. The wind nudged the porch chimes into a lazy conversation. I rang the bell once and waited. No reply. Then again, still nothing. I turned the knob and stepped inside. Mom? I called gently. She was in the kitchen, hunched over a crossword with her reading glasses low on her nose. She didn't look up. I brought flowers, I said. Oh. She finally lifted her gaze. Just put them in the sink. I walked over, placed the bouquet down. The scent of fresh-cut blooms mingled with the lingering smell of cinnamon toast. She hadn't set a plate for me. I wanted to talk about Sunday. She sighed. Rachel, if this is about the guest list, it's not. I folded my hands. I want to talk about fairness, about how things feel, about what I've been trying to build. She blinked, already disinterested. I've made a life. I've been good to people. I'm not asking for applause, but I won't pretend it doesn't hurt when I'm erased. Mom tilted her head. Melissa just wants to protect the family. She's always had that sense of duty. The word protect stung, like I was the threat. Before I could reply, the front door creaked open. Hope I'm not interrupting. Melissa's voice rang out like a wine glass hitting marble. She walked in with that same breezy confidence, like this house belonged to her and had for years. She spotted the flowers and raised an eyebrow. Hydrangeas? How quaint. I didn't reply. Melissa set her purse on the counter with a thunk. Mom, don't forget to go over the seating chart with me before Sunday. We wouldn't want anyone feeling left out. Her eyes flicked to mine. I stepped closer to Mom. I need to ask you something. My voice was steady. Am I not your daughter, too? She froze, looked at me, then looked down. No answer. No whisper of course you are. No hand squeeze. No defense. Melissa gave a low, disbelieving chuckle. Rachel, if you wanted attention, you should have earned it. I turned to her, heat rising in my chest. Earned it? By doing what? Performing for a seat at a table you all built around excluding me? Melissa smiled sweetly. No need to be dramatic. Then casually, she tugged Mom by the arm and led her a few feet away. Their voices dropped to a whisper, but not low enough. She just wants the house, Melissa said, her tones syrupy with malice. It's not about love. It never is with her. I stood still. Every cell in my body fought the urge to scream, to rip open every drawer and pull out every forgotten childhood card I ever made for Mom, to remind them that I had been here too. But instead, I turned and walked out. The wind hit colder than before. I left the flowers, let them wilt in that kitchen like every thankless gesture that came before. When I got home, the lights were dimmed. Daniel had taken Lily to the library, and they were just now returning. Her little feet raced down the hall ahead of him. Mama, she called out, climbing into my lap before I even sat down properly. Hi, sweetheart. She held up a drawing, bright with crayon hearts and uneven stick figures. Look, it's you and Daddy and me. The picture showed the three of us standing under a rainbow. The sun had a smiling face. Lily had drawn us all holding hands. See? She pointed. I gave you a crown. I bit the inside of my cheek as tears slid down quietly. Because there it was. The legacy I was fighting for. Not a house. Not an inheritance. But this scribbled world where I wasn't cropped out. Where I wasn't invisible. Where love wasn't measured in signatures or seating charts, but in stick figures with crowns and hearts above their heads. You can't be erased if you walk in glowing. Rachel stood in front of the mirror, hands slightly trembling as she adjusted the shoulder strap of her dress. The velvet clung to her frame like second skin, rich burgundy shimmering under the soft light of the vanity. It was elegant, bold, not the kind of dress that begged for approval, but the kind that refused to be ignored. Behind her, Jenna let out a low whistle. Damn, Rach. If they don't choke on their own tongues tonight, I'll eat my purse. Rachel laughed softly. I'm not trying to stun them. Jenna stepped forward, gently tugging the neckline into place. You're not hiding tonight. That's the point. In the background, the hum of cartoons and Lily's voice drifted in from the living room. Daniel was keeping her busy, pretending the plush animals were planning a fashion show for Rachel's big night. Rachel took one last look in the mirror, then turned to Jenna. Do I look like myself? You look like someone who's done waiting for permission. Rachel nodded. That'll have to do. Daniel appeared at the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other holding a tiny black box. You forgot something. He crossed the room and opened the box to reveal the ring Rachel had once found in his coat pocket. The one that had waited silently, patiently. Only if you still want to, he said softly. Rachel looked up at him, heart thudding. I want to wear it. He slipped it onto her finger. It wasn't flashy, just a simple band with a small sapphire. But it felt like an anchor, like a name spoken after years of being called everything else. From the hallway, Lily's footsteps pitter-pattered in, and she held up a necklace made of glitter beads and crooked hearts. So they know you're my mama. Rachel crouched and took the necklace with reverence. This is perfect, she whispered. Lily's eyes widened. Do I get to come? You'll come later with Daddy, Daniel answered, ruffling her hair. Mommy's going first. Rachel kissed Lily's forehead, then stood, voice steady. I need to do something first. She went into the bedroom and took out her phone. Sitting at the edge of the bed, she propped it up and hit record. Hi, she began, her voice soft. This is for the girl who cried in her car after every family dinner, for the woman who always arrived early so she wouldn't feel late, and for the mother who still wonders if she's doing enough. She paused, blinking back sudden wetness. I see you. I believe in you. And tonight we stop asking for space. We take it. She hit stop. No hashtags, no filters, just truth. She saved the video. One day she'd show it to Lily. A buzz on her phone broke the silence. It was Kevin. Melissa's bringing the paperwork to the party. Be ready. Rachel inhaled sharply, the reality re-entering like a slap of cold air. So, it was happening tonight. The final attempt to erase her. This time, in ink. She stood, walked back to the hallway. Daniel had Lily in his arms, rocking her gently. Jenna was straightening her own dress. For a brief second, Rachel allowed herself to freeze the image. These were her people. Her real family. She reached for her coat, then paused to look into the mirror again. Her eyes were clear, her shoulders firm. Her dress didn't shimmer. It glowed, like a beacon, like a warning. She reached out and took Lily's hand. Let's go remind them who I really am. As they stepped onto the porch, the last rays of daylight caught her dress and made it shine like armor. The wind shifted. The street was quiet. But Rachel was already louder than she'd ever been. She wanted an audience. So I brought the truth with me, dressed in velvet and resolve. The night air buzzed with polite laughter and the clink of wine glasses. String lights twinkled over the hedges like stars caught in a net, and Margaret's backyard, usually modest, had been transformed into a garden of curated perfection. A hired quartet played gentle classical music. Everything was beige, floral, and beige again. Rachel paused at the edge of the lawn, her heels sinking slightly into the grass, one hand holding Lily's, the other wrapped around Daniel's arm. Her velvet dress caught the light and shimmered like polished garnet. Conversation stuttered to a stop as heads turned. She heard a woman whisper, "Is that Rachel?" As though she were an unexpected ghost. Melissa was already standing near the center, holding a champagne flute and wearing a cream-colored sheath dress that hugged her like a smug whisper. Her voice rang out over the crowd. "And above all, I want to toast to the people who define what real love and stability look like. In a world full of noise, we keep it simple. Family first. Always." She raised her glass just as Rachel stepped into the spotlight of the hanging bulbs. Melissa blinked. "Oh," she said, louder than necessary. "I didn't think you'd come." Rachel didn't miss a beat. "I brought what matters most, with me." She gently lifted Lily's hand. Gasps weren't audible, but they were felt. Sharp inhalations that rustled like invisible fabric. Margaret turned from her place at the patio table. Her expression was a mixture of discomfort and calculation.
She walked toward Rachel, her lips pulled into a polite smile that never reached her eyes. "Rachel," Margaret said, voice tight, "you look different." Rachel smiled. "So do you, Mom." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. Jenna, already in the crowd, gave her a subtle thumbs up near the sangria table. Guests started shifting awkwardly, trying to look without staring. Kevin nodded at her from near the buffet table, his gaze full of tension and worry. Melissa let out a tinkling laugh, turning back to her gathered group. "Rachel's always had flair. It's just usually on mute." Rachel ignored the jab. She was scanning for something, but mostly feeling. The weight of Lily's hand reminded her why she was here. She wasn't here to argue. She wasn't here to beg. She was here to be seen. At that moment, Daniel stepped forward, clearing his throat. The quartet paused mid-note. "Sorry," he said, raising his voice slightly. "I hope you'll forgive the interruption. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but then again, life rarely goes as planned." Melissa's jaw twitched. "This isn't your moment," she hissed through a forced smile. Daniel ignored her. "I just wanted to take a second," he continued, "to say how lucky I am to be standing next to this woman." He turned to Rachel. "She's brilliant. She's strong. She's raised my daughter with love and patience, and she's shown me what it means to fight, not with fists, but with grace." The crowd murmured. Rachel froze. Then, slowly, Daniel dropped to one knee. There was no dramatic gasp from the audience, just an eerie, focused silence. Even the night breeze seemed to hush. Lily stepped forward, tugged Rachel's hand. "Say yes, Mama." Rachel covered her mouth, not in shock, but in something older, something like recognition. Her truth had finally collided with their lies and made more noise than she ever could have. She looked down at Daniel, at the man who had chosen her over and over, even when her own blood didn't. "Yes," she whispered, the word landing like thunder. Applause was scattered at first, unsure, confused. Then it swelled, if only to fill the silence. Melissa's face never moved. Her eyes were locked on Rachel, smile frozen. Then, without a word, she slipped behind Margaret and placed a hand on her mother's elbow. They moved quickly, retreating into the house like shadows at sunset. Rachel caught Kevin's eye. He nodded slightly. This wasn't over. Melissa was angry, secretly pulling her mother inside. "We need to finalize the paperwork, now. If you're going to erase someone, be sure they're not holding the pen." Rachel stepped through the back door, the sound of applause still echoing faintly from the garden behind her. The air inside Margaret's house was colder somehow, less celebratory. She slipped off her heels in the entryway, not out of habit, but as a quiet signal. This was not a performance. This was something else. Down the hall, voices rose in sharp fragments. Mom, this is the right time. I don't feel comfortable. It's just a signature. We've talked about this. Rachel followed the sound to the living room, where Margaret was seated stiffly on the floral couch. Melissa stood over her, holding a manila envelope in one hand and a pen in the other, her tone honeyed and poisonous. Think of the taxes, Melissa said, flipping to the final page. Think of security. You don't want complications later. Margaret looked small in her cardigan, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't even flinch as Rachel entered the room. Melissa did. Well, she said, not looking up. Look who's suddenly invested in this family. Rachel glanced down at the papers, drafts of the will, everything Jenna and Kevin had warned about. Her name was missing, not crossed out, not scribbled, just omitted, like she'd never existed. She heard footsteps behind her. Kevin, entering from the hallway with his phone in hand. Jenna appeared beside him, earbuds looped around her neck. Rachel took a deep breath. I'm not here to stop anything, she said calmly. If I have no place in this house, that's fine. I already built my own. Melissa scoffed. You want sympathy now, after years of playing victim from the sidelines? Rachel turned to Margaret. I didn't come to ask for a piece of paper or a seat at your table. I came to remind myself who I am. Jenna stepped forward and placed her phone on the table. The screen lit up with the photo Kevin had shown earlier, the draft legal documents, time-stamped and clear. Kevin stood beside her silently, arms crossed. I don't need you to fix anything, Mom, Rachel continued, but I do need you to see. She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone. With one tap, she played a short video. The room filled with the small, pure voice of a child. My mama loves the way home feels.
The video showed Lily sitting on the floor with markers scattered around her, drawing crooked hearts and smiling stick figures. She makes pancakes with bananas and she gives hugs that smell like books. Margaret's gaze was drawn to the screen. Her eyes didn't move. Her lips parted slightly as Lily's voice continued. And when I grow up, I want to be like her, because she makes everyone feel warm, even when people are cold. Melissa rolled her eyes. What is this? A sympathy reel? But Rachel didn't flinch. She just placed the phone gently on the table beside the legal papers. Margaret looked down at the pen Melissa had handed her, then at the envelope, then at Rachel. And then, without a word, she pushed the pen away. Melissa's jaw dropped. Are you serious? After everything I've done? Margaret didn't answer. She was still staring at the paused video frame of Lily, her tiny hand pointing to the stick figure with the crown. Rachel knelt, picked up her shoes, and stood tall. She didn't gloat. She didn't cry. She just turned, ready to walk away. Behind her, Melissa let out a low hiss of breath. She fumbled for her purse, yanked out her phone, and stalked toward the hallway. She pressed a number, turned her back, and muttered into the receiver, We're not done. Not yet. Some empires crumble in courtrooms. Ours unraveled over dinner and dirty secrets. The morning sun spilled through the coffee shop window, catching on the gold in Rachel's ring as she stirred her drink. Kevin sat across from her, nursing a lukewarm latte, his eyes still puffy from lack of sleep. I still can't believe she pulled out the papers, he muttered, shaking his head. In the middle of Mom's birthday, no less. Rachel smiled faintly. Melissa always had a flair for spectacle. Too bad she underestimated who was watching. Kevin snorted. Especially Mom. They sat in silence for a moment, the noise of the cafe humming around them. Kevin finally looked up. You really looked different last night, like you weren't afraid anymore. I wasn't, Rachel said softly. For once. Her phone buzzed on the table. Margaret. Rachel hesitated before answering. Hello? Her mother's voice was quieter than usual. Rachel, I need to talk, if that's all right. Rachel stepped outside the cafe, Kevin watching through the window. I'm listening. There was a pause. What Melissa did, it wasn't just wrong. It was desperate. And I let her push me into it. I thought protecting her meant keeping things simple. But I see now what that simplicity cost. Rachel leaned against the brick wall, heart steady. I'm not perfect, Margaret continued, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But I wanted you to know. I destroyed the copies. The lawyer won't be getting anything from me. Rachel's breath caught. Thank you. Margaret's voice faltered. You remind me so much of your father. The way you stood there last night made me realize how far I'd let myself drift. Another buzz cut through the moment. This time, a call from Melissa. Rachel declined it. A minute later, a text came in. Pick up, unless you're too busy playing mommy with your stolen life. Kevin stepped out beside her just as the phone rang again. Let me guess. Queen Mel? Rachel picked up this time. Melissa. You think they'll love you now? Melissa spat. You think a ring and a brat with a crayon crown make you real? Rachel didn't flinch. I don't need their love, just my life. There was silence on the other end. Then Melissa hung up. Rachel turned to Kevin. She's not used to being ignored. She'll learn, he replied. Later that afternoon, Rachel sat on her couch, legs tucked under a blanket, while Jenna's voice floated through the speakerphone. The papers were never finalized, Jenna confirmed. Your mother's call to the lawyer took care of everything. The will stays as is. You're safe. Rachel exhaled slowly. She's angry, Jenna added. But she's isolated. No one's defending her now. That night, Margaret called again. I told Melissa to leave the house, she said. Just for a month. I need time, space to think without her voice in my ear. Rachel didn't say anything for a few seconds. That couldn't have been easy. No, Margaret admitted, but it was necessary. The next morning, Rachel stood across the street from the house she had grown up in. The porch light was off, the curtains drawn. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a fortress or a mirror of her own failure. It was just a house. She tightened the coat around her, looked once more at the windows where she used to stand and watch the world pass her by, then whispered to the air, I'm finally not afraid of this place. When the storm passes, you don't always find peace, but you find clarity. The playground was nearly empty, save for a few children chasing one another around the jungle gym. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mulch, painting golden streaks on Lily's hair as she squealed with delight, pumping her legs on the swing Rachel was gently pushing. Rachel smiled, her hand firm on the swing's chain, her thoughts as still as the air around her. It had been a week since the party, since the night everything tilted, and began to settle again. Not perfectly, but into a shape she could finally live with. Lily's laughter pierced the quiet. Hi, Mama, Rachel obliged, pushing a little harder. Hold on tight, sweetheart. Daniel watched from a nearby bench, a takeaway coffee cup resting between his palms. When Rachel sat beside him, he glanced at her with that familiar, steady warmth. You know, he said, we don't have to stay near them. We could go anywhere, start over completely. Rachel shook her head, but there was no bitterness in her voice. I'm not staying because of them. I'm staying because this is my life, finally mine. He nodded, his thumb brushing hers. Just making sure you're choosing for you. I am. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Jenna's name lit up the screen. Rachel answered on speaker. Hey, troublemaker. Good trouble, Jenna said. I've got news. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Margaret emailed me, Jenna continued. Not you, me. Rachel sat up straighter. What did she say? She said thank you, for being the kind of friend who helped her daughter stand tall. And get this, she said she's talking to a new lawyer, considering redrafting the deed so that all 3 of her kids are named, not just Melissa. Rachel blinked. Seriously? Seriously. She's processing. Rachel leaned back on the bench, processing herself. Daniel gave her a look that asked if she was okay. She nodded. After the call ended, they stayed there for a while, just watching Lily make a mess of her dress in the sandbox. The sun began to dip, casting warm hues over the sky. Later that evening at home, Rachel sorted the mail absent-mindedly, until one envelope caught her eye. No return address. Her name written in neat, slightly wobbly cursive. She knew that handwriting. She opened it slowly, hands trembling a little without meaning to. Inside was a single page. Rachel, the letter began. I may not understand your life. I don't pretend to. But I see you now. Rachel sank onto the edge of the couch, her eyes scanning every word as if they might dissolve. You've built something I never had the courage to imagine. You've taken care of a child who calls you Mama, and I've never heard love spoken so clearly. Her breath caught. Your daughter calls you Mama. That's all the proof I need. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. Not the hot tears of grief or the sharp ones of fury. These were softer, cleansing. She folded the letter carefully and walked over to the bookshelf. There, beside a framed photo of Lily grinning with her front teeth missing, she placed the letter. Deliberately, reverently. Then, with a new kind of stillness in her hands, Rachel pulled out a notepad and wrote 3 words beneath the date. We're visiting next week. This house never had a photo of me. Until today. Rachel stood just outside the front door, Lily's tiny hand curled into hers. Daniel at her side holding a simple brown bag that carried something more permanent than any apology. The wind rustled the hedges along the walkway, but the house ahead was still. No tension behind the windows this time. No watching eyes. Only sunlight reflecting gently off the porch light. The front door opened before she could knock. Margaret stood there, her expression carefully neutral, but softer than before. Her sweater hung loosely on her shoulders, and there was a slight tremble in her voice as she said, You're here. Rachel nodded. We brought something. Lily let go of Rachel's hand and rushed forward. Grandma, she chirped. Margaret bent slightly to catch her in an awkward hug, the kind that was still learning how to fit right. Hello, sweetheart, she said, stroking Lily's hair. Come on in. Inside, the house smelled of roasted rosemary chicken and citrus cleaner. Rachel stepped into the familiar living room, pausing for a second when she caught sight of the mantel above the fireplace. Still lined with photos. Claire in her recital dress. Melissa and Margaret on vacation. Kevin at graduation. The same gallery of family, carefully curated over the years. Her own absence had always been a silent punctuation mark. Daniel carefully pulled the frame from the bag and handed it to Rachel. She turned it around in her hands one last time before walking to the center of the room. The photo was simple. Just her and Lily, caught mid-laugh in a sun-drenched kitchen. Lily's hands covered in frosting, Rachel smiling with the kind of joy no one had ever managed to photograph before. Rachel looked at her mother. We thought maybe this could go here. Margaret studied the image. Then, without a word, she took it from Rachel's hands and moved a few items aside on the cabinet near the mantel. Slowly, deliberately, she set the frame down in the middle, where no one could miss it. Rachel held her breath. Kevin appeared beside her and leaned in, whispering, Now that's permanence. She exhaled, a quiet smile forming at the edges of her lips. Lily ran circles through the house, giggling as she chased after a balloon someone had left floating from the previous week's dinner. Daniel wandered into the kitchen with Kevin, laughing at something she couldn't hear. Jenna's text buzzed softly in her pocket. Let me know when you're ready to tell this story. I'll publish it. Rachel sat on the old couch, the same one she used to curl into at 16, feeling invisible. It no longer swallowed her whole. Now it just felt comfortable. Margaret brought over a cup of tea, placing it in front of her without a word. There was still so much unsaid. But the photo in the frame spoke louder than anything either of them could manage. As the afternoon sun slanted deeper into the house, Lily crawled into Rachel's lap, warm and drowsy, her fingers playing with the hem of Rachel's sleeve. You tired, bug? Rachel murmured. Lily shook her head sleepily. Just comfy. Rachel wrapped an arm around her, gazing across the room. I never needed to own this house, she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. I just needed to know I belonged in it. Later that night, after tucking Lily into bed and kissing Daniel goodnight, Rachel sat down at her laptop. The screen glowed against the soft hum of silence in their apartment. She opened a new email draft. 2. Jenna subject, the life they never saw. The house that once erased her now carried her photo at its heart. Rachel didn't reclaim walls or wills. She reclaimed her place in a story written without her name. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It arrives in quiet clarity, in the unwavering love of a child, and in the strength to stand when everyone expects you to disappear. Like a letter once unsent, truth always finds its way when spoken without fear. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story moved you, like, share, and tell us how you feel. Comment 1 if you resonated with Rachel's journey, or 2 if you still have thoughts left unsaid.